Hey, what's going on? What's going on? It's Victor Bartley going live. I'm here on a few platforms and just wanted to take a few minutes to do a tribute to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His birthday was just celebrated on this past Saturday, which would have really just sobering reality that he would have been 96 if he were still alive today. And just the significance of that, where, there are so many that have recently passed that were luminaries in our society for various reasons. And they just passed. And so just such a sobering thought. But I really want to, as this time of reflecting on the change that he called for, just kind of want to talk along the lines of his own experiences with burnout. Obviously, the term burnout is a relatively, it was not coined at that time. It was first coined by Dr. Herbert Fordenberger in the 1970s. And so little under 10 years after his assassination, this term comes to the forefront in the psychological and mental health industry and space. And so MLK in 1956, there is a 1957, rather, there's a story that is chronicled and verified of his own experience in his kitchen, ready to throw in the towel after a couple of months into the bus boycott in Montgomery that would last for the year. There were some relationships within the city that began to sour, and he was constantly getting death threats, and just some challenges that he was even going through within the movement, as it were. And he shares a lot of the reflections of that in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. And in that book, he shares quite a bit. But this episode that occurred in January of 1957 is extremely special because in this moment of darkness, while in his kitchen, it's said that he was depressed. He was worn out. These are all symptoms of what we now know to be burnout. And obviously, the work that he was doing was very heavy, was extremely weighty on him and on many of the leaders that still are part of a marginalized community in the state of America. And so we find his life and his relatability to burnout to be, I believe, inspiring for a couple of reasons. One of them being that he not only went through it, but he learned how to manage carrying the stress that he was under. There's an emphasis in the area of burnout today of relieving the stress, of not dealing with the anxiety, of not dealing with the pressure. But the reality is that depending on what your call is in life, whatever your purpose for being is, it really may send you directly into spaces where stress is just the reality that you have to deal with. I just had a conversation with a good friend and leader, Robert Kennedy III, and looking forward to connecting with him again. But he shared something that I thought was a powerful illustration, where he talked about the idea that our lives are like a board of wood, and if you stack bricks on them, stress is being added, and after a certain point, the bow, or rather the board of wood, begins to bow, and obviously that's due to the stress, gravity, and so on and so forth, a few other factors that are incorporated into the physics of what's going on. But one of the things that we discussed is the reality that sometimes we can't get rid of the bricks. Sometimes the bricks are a part of our journey. Sometimes the bricks may be unfair. Sometimes the bricks may not be things that we can change right now. And so the next thing to do in addressing the case of burnout when the bricks are loaded on you is redistributing, right? Redistributing the load that you're carrying in such a way that is productive for your life and your well-being. And so on that night in January, that's what he experienced, where there was a redistribution of the load that he was carrying. And it was so powerful because the record declares that he heard a voice speaking to him. Now he was of the Christian faith and movement, and so he attributed the voice, the epiphany, even to or theophany, really, to the person of Jesus, to the person of Jesus speaking to him, encouraging him, and telling him to stand up for righteousness, stand up for justice, and that he would not be left alone, despite the challenges, the threats, and the pressure that was on his life. And King said that from that moment on, he was able to face the uncertain future with the reality of accepting that death was looming over his life with courage. And while everybody's calling may not be in that type of role, in that type of space, I think it speaks to the importance of redistributing the pressure. You know, sometimes when there are stressors that are on our lives. There are obviously voices that are reinforcing the impact of that stressor. And sometimes those voices that come along with those stressors are so debilitating, so paralyzing, so hostage scenario feels to it. And I don't have any room to breathe. I don't have any room to move. And so even as he was receiving death threats, even up until the very hours before he experiences hearing from God, he was able to take those messages and turn them down. Um, he doesn't go into much detail about actually what he did to turn down those voices, but what he does amplify is that there was one voice that resounded, that offered courage in spite of the challenge that he was dealing with. So this is extremely powerful for me, and I know there are other leaders that are in spaces where you are addressing burnout and you've been looking for ways to get rid of it. And the reality is, like Dr. King, getting rid of it based on your call, based on the purpose, based on the mission assigned to your life is not possible. Um, it's possible, rather. You have, obviously, you always have the option, but there is such a pull to living on purpose that you can't shake. That going into danger is the only way to live faithfully, is the only way to live intentionally, and is the only way to live on purpose, and live where you've exhausted your life doing what you not just love to do, but you know you've been called to do. And so he moved forward from that day, facing what would be the historical Montgomery bus boycott, and led to some changes. While he also acknowledged that he, after some reflection, realized that felt like he was leading the group into a burning building, he was able to continue to move forward in his path. And I think that's another lesson that I also draw from him, not just, listening, keying in on the voice that's actually going to give me courage, but it does really lead us to recalibrating and being clear on what the calling actually is. Sometimes there are some things that we take on in our lives, that we take on, that we put on ourselves, even that are the result of us listening to voices, be it family, be it friends, be it the circle that we are connected with. We feel that we have to just do this. And it's not something that we've actually taken the time to verify, but it feels good to make them feel good. It feels good to validate their expectations on our lives. And it's not there's a lack of peace because we haven't actually done the verifying ourselves. And so I believe that his wrestling in that night where he chose to move forward in courage also calls for us to courageously clarify what our calling is. He in that moment was confirming, he was able to confirm what his call had been, that he had sensed even from childhood, to be a voice of truth, a voice of hope, and a voice of change. So you have those aspects. You have those aspects of him having to actually redistribute the weight, through the voice, through listening to the voice that he attributes to hearing from the Lord. But then you also have the clarifying of the call. Is it actually what you've been assigned to do? But thirdly, that I want to share with you is the importance of also having those around you that can encourage you. It's documented his all-time favorite singer was Mahalia Jackson, and she was instrumental in keeping him and supporting him and encouraging him on many nights where he struggled with the stress of the movement, and she would soothe his troubled heart with songs. This is all before social media and all of these things, and so it was a phone call, and so with the phone to his ear, the music, the melody that she sang would support and uplift him. It goes without saying the impact that music has, not just on our not on our conscious mind, but on our subconscious mind as well. Um, and so as I always encourage people, it's good to sing. It's good to have songs that we can go to, that can encourage us when we are clear on the calling that we're to walk in, when we have to redistribute weight, um, but also just along life's journey, because there are times when it is just difficult, too difficult to bear. We're never really intended to bear this on our own, but sometimes just moving forward in the assignment that's upon us just seems too much. So I'm grateful for his legacy, along with the other leaders, the other luminaries that aren't highlighted as much, but I think he speaks his legacy and his work um, is extremely valuable. And so I just want to encourage you that, this, whatever you are going through, if you are currently in a bout with burnout and you are looking to move forward, just to encourage you to do some deep assessing of, is there a way to redistribute the weight? Do I need to let some of it go? But if there isn't anything about the assignment, about the role that you can let go, because it's so tied to your purpose, so tied to your clear calling, redistributing it, but also taking time to be still, to take rest, and to listen. And that's our word for the year. And so I just want to encourage you to continue to move forward in that, and to listen well, to be of good courage, and to continue the fight that you have been purposed to fight. Remember, burnout is an invitation to begin again.